Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the class. So yesterday we have started discussing about mutual funds. When we talk about mutual funds are basically a passive form of investment where there's a fund manager which is appointed by the asset management company. The purpose of the fund manager is to create a portfolio based upon a certain objective, and if we like that objective, and if our objective is same like objective which with the fund manager has created the portfolio, then we'll go investing our money in that mutual fund. Normally, like in the stock market, every stock has a price. Like the same way in mutual fund, every fund have a price. So the price of a fund is called as NAV, net asset value. So whenever you want to buy a mutual fund, so what money can I pay to get 1 unit of the mutual fund? That is what is called as NAV of the mutual fund. So whenever we do investment in mutual funds are either open-ended fund or they are either close-ended fund. Open-ended funds are those funds where we can invest our money anytime and we can withdraw our money anytime. Okay. While close-ended funds are not like that. In the case of close-ended fund, so there's a certain time period within which only if you want you can invest in the mutual fund, and then your money will be get locked in that, and probably once the instrument get mature, then only you can withdraw the money, or you can, if you want, you can again reinvest your money. Normally the close-ended mutual funds are ELSS, equity linked savings scheme. So ELSs are the best example of close-ended mutual fund where we get tax advantage as per the section 80C. Okay, and ELSs, equity linked savings scheme, where whenever we do investment, our money get locked for the 3 year. They are basically equity diversified fund, and where the money what we'll invest in them, they are majorly being invested in the big MNCs or the top blue chips companies. Okay, so they are basically ELSs. So when we do investment in mutual fund, so we can either invest in equity, we can either invest in debt, or we can invest in hybrid funds. Okay, within equity we can invest in equity diversified, or we can invest in sectorial fund, or we can invest in contra fund. So a lot of options we have even in equity only. When you think of doing investment, you can invest on large cap funds or mid cap funds or small cap funds. So like as a normal, so no matter what forms of ideology we follow, but that forms of portfolio diversification, I don't think so that would be possible by the normal individual when he or she look for investment in the market. So that's why a mutual fund as a passive form of investment is always an ideal destination for all the people who want to invest in the equity market, who want to take an advantage of what is happening in the economy. At the same time, we can invest in debt funds, so where the money get locked and the risk factor is also less. The returns are more or less guaranteed. In debt funds also we have such kinds of funds where the money get invested in shorter debt instruments like money markets. So in money markets, normal individuals are not allowed to participate. Only banks can participate, corporate can participate. Banks can borrow and lend money. Corporate can borrows money from money market. Individuals are not allowed to participate in money market, but through mutual funds, indirectly you can invest in money market, where there's a fund manager who will invest in money markets in behalf of us. So that way, I believe mutual funds are very good channels for doing investment. Right now, if you're watching, then you would have seen lot of ad of mutual fund keep coming in TV. Only thing, whenever you see any ad for mutual fund, they mention at the end that the mutual funds are market risk. Please read the offer document before investment. So that is there. So we know that Whenever we talk about total risk on the investment, it is sum total of systematic risk and unsystematic risk. So the other name of systematic risk is market risk. So no matter what we do, what forms of diversification we follow, but they are systematic risk or market specific risk or macroeconomic risk, which we can never minimize, like the recent events, what is happening around the world. So around what is happening, we are seeing some kind of war-like situation in and around the time. So the US election is happening, in India election is happening. So flood comes or famine come or some terrorist attack comes. So these things we can never minimize, no matter what forms of portfolio diversification we can do. So that these risks are always there in our investment. But even then, whenever we try to analyze a mutual fund, so basically when we talk about the analysis on the mutual fund, basically we look at some ratios like Sharpe ratio. We normally look at some ratios like Sharpe ratio. Sharpe ratio basically talks about risk return relationship. In the case of Sharpe ratio, we use a formula called return on portfolio minus risk free rate of return divided by standard deviation of portfolio into 100. This is Sharpe ratio. Okay, so in the case of Sharpe ratio, we find the relation between risk and return, where the risk we measure in the form of unsystematic risk. So which where we see the risk in the form of standard deviation. Then we have trainer ratio. Then we have trainer ratio. Trainer ratio is the return on portfolio minus risk-free rate of return divided by beta of the portfolio into 100. So this is trainer ratio. Here in the risk, we took beta. Beta is the factor of systematic risk. So trainer ratio basically talks about a risk return relationship, where in the term of risk, we consider a beta of the portfolio as an factor which can measure the risk. And then we have third kind of ratio called Jensen alpha. It's not a ratio, it's basically a mathematical parameter which talks about the return on your portfolio, how much that is more than your CAPM return. This is basically your Jensen alpha. So your return on a portfolio, CAPM return is what? So CAPM return, I hope you remember. CAPM stands for Capital Asset Pricing Model. So here we use a formula called RF plus beta into RM minus RF. This is the formula of CAPM model. So these are the three ratios which we have seen yesterday when we are talking about the analysis on the mutual fund. Along with this, we saw what is standard deviation. So standard deviation is basically is a factor which measures the unsystematic risk on the portfolio. Okay, while the beta is the factor which measures the market risk on the portfolio. So as per the CAPM model, it is a single risk factor model, where when we talk about a well diversified portfolio, so then I'll bring all the risk all together into one factor called beta. And beta is the factor which measures the sensitivitiness of the stock with respect to with respect to the movement in the market. So how sensitive is the stock with respect to the movement in the market, that beta basically talks about. Okay, so these are the basic three ratios which I have mentioned in past. So we'll discuss numericals based on these ratios. So you can see this question. Now see this question. Consider the following information for the three mutual funds A, B, C, and the market. So you can see three mutual funds are given. So their return is given, standard deviation is given, the beta is given, or the market index return on market is given, standard deviation of market is given, and the risk-free rate is given as 6%. So calculate the trainer ratio and Sharpe ratio, Jensen measure for the three mutual funds. Okay, so what I can do, I can calculate their CAPM first. If I calculate the Sharpe ratio, Sharpe measure or Sharpe ratio, whatever. If I measure the Sharpe measure, so for A, what is a Sharpe measure? So return is 12% minus risk-free rate of return, that is 6%, divided by the standard deviation, that is 18%. So here I can see 6 divided by 18 is only 1 by 3. Okay. So then for B, Sharpe ratio, this would be, for B, this would be return is 10 minus 6, 10 minus 6 divided by 15. The standard deviation is 15. This is 4 by 15. Then for C return is 13 minus 6 divided by standard deviation 7 by 20. So these are the Sharpe measures of A, B, and C. Okay, then we talk about trainer measure. Then we talk about trainer measure. A trainer measure is same thing. Numerator remain the same. The only thing which differ is the denominator. The beta is 1.1. So this will give you 60 by 11, 5.55. Then 40. 40 means 55. 55 then 50. 50 means 4. 50 means 4. Then 60. So 4 5 4 5 4 5. Then for B trainer measure, this would be 10 minus 6 divided by the beta. Beta is 0.9. This is 4% divided by 0.9. 40 by 9. So 9 fours are 36. 9 fives are 45. So 40 means 4.4444. Then C 13 minus 6 divided by the beta. Beta is 1.2. This is 7 divided by 1.2. This is 70 divided by 12. So 12 sevens are 84. 12 six are 72. 12 fives are 60. 100 eights are 40. Threes are. So these are the trainer measures for ABC. So we calculated the Sharpe ratio. We calculated the trainer ratio. Anyone, any doubt? So okay, we calculated the Sharpe ratio, trainer ratio. Then Jensen alpha. For Jensen alpha, I need to calculate the CAPM return. So ABC, if I see ABC, they return ABC, if I see ABC, if I see the mean return, all in percentage, 12, 10, 13. Okay. RF is given to them, that is 6%. RF means risk-free rate of return, that we called as RF. The return, what normally you get on the government securities having the same maturity. So the return offered by government securities are considered to be most risk-free return, because we don't believe that the government of India can ever default on its obligation. So we consider that as a risk-free return. So that's why that we call as RF. Beta, when we see the beta, so beta is the measure which talks about the how sensitive is our portfolio or stock with respect to the market. If any stock have a beta more than one, means the stock is more sensitive than market. Then if market change by 10%, the stock will change by 11%. 0.9 means less risky than market. 1.2 means more risky than the market. Okay, then RM means market return. So you can see the market return. So the mean return of market 11%. You can find CAPM return. So there's a theory proposed by Eugene Fama. That theory is called efficient market hypothesis. This is the theory which is proposed by an economist called Eugene Fama. So So, as per the efficient market hypothesis, no matter what form of portfolio we create, but we can never beat the market. That is what efficient market hypothesis says that. But in reality, there are a lot of fund managers are there who creates in the past lot of forms of portfolios which able to beat the market, which has able to generate the return better than the market. So this efficient market hypothesis is just in theory. It is just a model which you should be aware about. So CAPM return. So this is our formula for CAPM return. Already I told you that is RF plus beta into RM minus RF. RF 6 plus beta 1.1 into RM minus RF 6, 11 minus 6. This is 6 plus zero point 0.9, 11 minus 6. This is 6 plus 1.2, 11 minus 6. This is 6 plus 5. 5 into 1.1, 11 fives of 5.5. This is 11.5. This is 6 plus 5 into zero point 0.9. So 9 fives are 45, 4.5, 10.5. 6 plus 5, 1.2 into 5. That is 6. That is 12. So these are CAPM written. So if this you mean return, then CAPM return. So mean return minus CAPM return, if we'll do mean return minus CAPM return. So that is alpha. Alpha means the return on a portfolio minus EAPM return. So 12 minus 11.5, 12 minus 11.5, that is 0.5. Then 10 minus 10.5, 10 minus 10.5, that is minus 0.5. This is 13 minus 12. This is 13 minus 12, that is 1%. So this is called alpha, Jensen alpha. So how much can you get the return better than the market? So that we called as EAPM return. So the return what you can get from the market. So how is your portfolio? So underdeveloped portfolio or overvalued portfolio, that we can determine. So alpha basically the possibility that will you able to beat the market or not. So if you generate the positive alpha means you are very good fund manager. Means you have crossed the benchmark return. The benchmark return for the first was 11.5%. For the second one was 10.5%, and while for the third one is 12%. So if you can generate the positive alpha means that fund manager is very knowledgeable, and we should rely on that fund manager for doing investment. That part you can understand by looking at the alpha. Okay. Anyone have any doubt? Anyone any doubt? So if you see this efficient market hypothesis. So this is efficient market hypothesis. So the efficient market hypothesis, or alternatively known as the efficient market theory, it is an hypothesis that states that the share price reflects all information and consistent alpha generation is impossible. Alpha, I hope you remember. Just now I was talking about alpha only. Jensen alpha, you return more than CAPM return. So according to the efficient market hypothesis, you cannot generate alpha, you cannot generate positive alpha. So according to efficient market hypothesis, stocks always trade at their fair value on exchange, okay, making it impossible for the investor to purchase the undervalued stock or to sell the stocks for the inflated price. Therefore, it should be impossible to outperform the overall market through expert stock selection or market timing. And the only one way an investor can obtain higher return is to purchase higher risky investment. See, so this is just a theory. So what this theory says, that you can never predict the undervalued stock. So undervalued stocks are those stocks which has the possibility to give you high return in the future. So undervalued stocks are those stocks which are right now cheaper. Maybe it's not up to the market perception. So as per the mathematical calculation, you find that the stock carries lot of value. So how the stock carries lot of value? So how will you understand the stock carries lot of value? So for that you need to look into the fundamentals of the company. You look it into the technical of the company, fundamentals of the company. By how will I identify? By looking at the fundamentals of the company. So you need to see the business model. So how innovative is the business model of that company? What the managements are all about? Who have started the company? How much they have knowledge about the particular product which they want to cater in the market? What do you see the potential of that product in the future? Okay, so what you see the way these people have run in the past, any other company. So all that will ultimately will tell the the value for the company in the future. So the value what we believe about a company in the future, that we call as the intrinsic value of, okay, Okay, so normally whenever you we do analysis on the stock, we normally look into the lot of ratios for the company. We look into the price to earning ratio, P ratio. We look into the PB ratio, price to book value ratio. So price to earning ratio and price to book value ratios are very important ratios to analyze in stock. So what is the worth of the stock? Is it undervalued or is it overvalued? So for that we do fundamental analysis on the stock. So whenever we do fundamental analysis on the stock, we see the management of the company, we see the history of the management of the company, we see traditionally till then how they have run the company till now, what is the prospects of the business model of this company, how viable is that business model. So then probably we look into the accounting performance of the company by looking into the ratios, like either we look into the activity ratios like inventory turnover ratio or account receivable ratio or account payable ratio. We look into the liquidity ratio of the company like current ratio, quick ratio. Then we have then current ratio, quick ratio. Uh, then we look into the profitability ratio of the company, either net profit margin, gross profit margin, operating profit margin, return on equity, return on investments. So all that given fair picture about the company. If you compare the ratios, financial ratio of the company with the competitor of the company, we can understand the worth of the company in the market. And in order to determine the worth of the stock, that is this undervalued stock or overvalued stock. So the best tool what we can use, you can look into the price to cash flow ratios, price to earning ratios, price to book value ratios. You can look into the enterprise value ratio. So all that will give you a lot of understanding about the stock. And if you feel that the stock is undervalued stock, so we can invest our money in that undervalued stock, and then we can wait that in future that the stock would grow, and when the stock would grow probably in the future, then we could able to get the return better than the market. This is the way how Warren Buffett do investment. This is the way how Rakesh Jhunjhunwala do investment. So they figure out the undervalued stocks. So the those undervalued stocks which have likely potential in the future, and then probably after waiting for certain time period for the future, till then the fortune of the company to turn up, and then probably then probably that the investment can be sold off to get the return better than the market. So you think about the company like Reliance Industry, 1977 when Reliance Industry came up with an IPO. So the IPO price was 10 rupees. Within 4 years, from 10 rupees, they become 300 rupees. So that was the kind of momentum what Reliance Industry has shown to the investor. Always, the Reliance Industry as a company was favorable, was favorite among investors. Which always believe that it will always give you very good return. So as per the efficient market hypothesis, there's no undervalued stock. You cannot figure out the undervalued stock, and since you cannot figure out the undervalued stock, so you can never able to get the return better than the market. So efficient market hypothesis believed on the efficient market. It believed on the proper information symmetry. It believed that any news which comes about any company at same instant of time, it will dispersed among everyone in the market. So there's no one who can get an unfair advantage of the news about the company in the future. So as such, that is not possible as per the efficient market hypothesis. So as per the efficient market hypothesis, the market is basically determined into three form: either strong, semi-strong form, or weak form. Okay, so that is about efficient market hypothesis. So the efficient market says that the share price reflects the all information. Okay, and the stock always trade at the fair market value on exchange. So efficient market hypothesis talks about a very efficient market where the share price reflects all the information about the company, and everyone follow fair practices in the market, and everyone have all the possible logic or reason or knowledge about the stock of the past and the stocks which can happen in the market. So because of demand and supply, always there's a symmetry in the market. That is what efficient market hypothesis says that. So this is it is just in theory about whatever the efficient market hypothesis has proposed in their discussion. So when we see in real market, yes, we have seen a lot of scam like Harshad Mehta scam, Ketan Parekh scam. We have seen lot of scams in the market. We know how those scams happen. So those scams happen because of the improper functioning of our market, because the market was not so much knowledgeable or reasonable to understand what is happening around the market. So the practices like insider tradings are always there in the market. So what is insider trading? What is basically an insider trading? So when I talk about this term called insider trading, so what is basically insider trading? So insider trading is not legal as per the Indian tax laws or any other country law. So insider trading basically means that when some individuals get the knowledge about the company which no one else have that knowledge. If you have seen that current there's a web series coming on Harshad Mehta, or if you have knowledge about the market, you know that it is the information which derives the market. So good news or bad news about the company. So whatever the news what comes in the market, news affect the market. So insider trading means when some people they try to take advantage of the position in the market. When some people, because of their links with corporates, they get the information about a company which general public normally don't have. So when they get such kind of information about the company, the kind of decisions the company is going to take likely in the future, if I start getting the news about certain companies, what they're going to do in the future, how they're going to do in the future, and how those decisions what these companies are taking, how these decisions ultimately affect the stocks in the future once the decision will come out. So if the decision will be positive decision, then it would make the stock price to go up. While if the decisions would be negative decision, then it would make the stock price to go down. So imagine if I get to know about a certain kind of news about the company which no one else knows, and because I got the accessibility of the news about the company which no one got, because how I got that accessibility, because I know someone who is working in the company. I know I have my links with the company. I have my own people in the managements of the company. I have my own people in the board of directors of the company. And what they do before that company make a public announcement about any kind of event, I before that only I get that news. And before that, because the moment I get that news, I know how to play with that news. So if that news will be good, I know that the stock price will increase. I know if the news will be bad, then the stock price will. So before that, only what I'll do, I'll buy or sell the stocks in the market so that I can get an advantage of the news what I got before others. This is considered as an unfair practice of that somebody try to take an advantage about the news about of some company which normal other people don't have. And this of trading where someone he or she makes unfair profit advantage, and this is called insider trading. Normally when we believe that the market will increase in the future, then we call this as a bullish market. Then we believe that the market will increase in the future, it is called bullish market. When we believe that that the market will fall in the future, then it is called as bearish market. So whenever you see bearish market, bear, so when you see market will fall, so we represent it by bear. When we believe that the market will go up, we represent this with bull. So in bearish market, when you know that today the market will fall, so many people they do short selling. Many people they do short selling. Short selling means they will sell first, they'll sell first and they'll buy it later on. They'll buy it later on. So they'll buy it later on within the day. Within the within the day. Within the day, they'll buy it later on when the price will fall down. That is called as short selling. So normally, normally when you trade in the market, you first buy and then you sell. But when some days when we believe that today the market will fall down gradually, so what we can do in such trading on such trading day to get the advantage of the falling market, we can sell the stock first, and later on when the stock will fall down, we'll buy it at the lesser price. So that is called short selling in the market. Okay. Anyone, any doubt? Any question? Anyone?